everyone, this is Jane with Barlow Herbal, and happy Sunday, September 28th of 2025. Now, I'm going to jump right into this week's journaling because I had a lot come in, and we'll see if I get all the way through it. Now, the first thing I'm going to start with is I wrote down just the fact that there are 3 months left of this year. So we've got a couple days more left in September if you're watching this on the day I posted, and then we've got October, November, December. And what really dropped into me with that thought is the phrase or the two words, I am. And I think we need to remember that we have courage, strength, inner wisdom, living in the present moment, and focusing on our sovereignty and our freedom. I think that these times are so incredible that we need to take advantage and see them for what they are. So then times are quickening. We are standing on a threshold, political, economic, spiritual, and energetic. The chaos, the distortion, and the noise in the world and what's happening right now, it's not random, okay? It doesn't feel random to me. It feels very much on purpose to me. And I think that many people are feeling that too. We can feel that there's something that is not right. Something massive happens, and something feels off with the whole thing, right? What I think is happening is this: the shadow of the collective is surfacing, okay? Because the volume of consciousness has been turned up, okay? So consciousness is rising. And if you think I'm crazy to say that, if you stop and you pay attention to the frequencies, this is why the shadow is being so exposed, is because light and high consciousness is rising. It's almost like we're turning up the max of the dial, right? The old structures, of course, all these old systems we say are crumbling, the social, the mental, and the spiritual. If you really think about this, and here's what I wrote, they can't hold the frequencies, so they're cracking. So these old structures, they can't hold the frequency, and so they're being so exposed for how fragile and crappy they are that they are cracking, okay? We are witnessing and watching them fall. There's no doubt about that from my perspective. And I think that many people, especially if you're watching this, you probably already have a higher perspective and you're able to zoom out and look at the bigger picture because you have studied spirituality, you've studied higher consciousness, you've gone within, you understand that we are individually here to save ourselves. Now, do we have to be proactive? Yes, 100%. So then I wrote this is not new. It started a long time ago. The manipulations, the distortions, and the distractions. This is not a brand new thing. In fact, that's why so many of the population have fallen and have been manipulated. They're fallen for the distortions and the distractions because it's been happening for so long. It's been put in there subtly, and now it's speeding up, okay? We're all designed, all these things are designed to pull us off of our center, pull us away from ourselves and our inner guidance and our connection to the divine, right? But now it feels like what they're doing is the dial is at full blast. So this is something really important for you to think about. If it almost feels like, I don't know how I can survive in this world, it seems so chaotic and so crazy, and the political system and people getting hurt and people dying, and the dial is up full blast, and it's on purpose. It's completely on purpose, okay? So the fear, the confusion, the division. But here's how we need to look at all of these things. This is all to bait us. It's to bait, like B-A-I-T. It's to catch us. It's to snag us. It's to snare us. It's to bait us. All of this, the fear, the distractions, the distortions, they're not here to do anything but throw us off center and to bait us into more fear, and bait us into anger with each other, bait us into division. That's why all these things are here, right? And here's the first question, because I actually have some good questions too. Will we take it or will we transcend it? Okay, are we going to take it? Are we going to take this dial turned up full blast and just let us get caught up in the river of it all and just let it take us away? Or are we going to transcend? Okay? Discernment is our new survival skill. This is something I've been talking about for a long time, because I will tell you, sometimes when big things happen and it gets reported on by multiple sources, even alternative sources, social media, mainstream media, something major will happen and right away my antenna goes up. When I see something and it doesn't feel right, my discernment is so high right now that this really is a survival skill in these times. You must know how to discern, okay? It's not optional, it's spiritual self-defense, okay? Every message, every headline, every reel, every narrative that we consume, what these things do, we need to remember, is that they carry a frequency. There is an energetic frequency. If you go down a rabbit hole, the algorithm's going to keep feeding you more of that same rabbit hole, whether you're on any of the social media platforms, whether you're on YouTube. I think even Rumble feeds you that. I don't spend a lot of time on Rumble, I don't know. But all these things carry a frequency, and we need to remember that. It either feeds your soul or feeds your fear. Okay, so wherever you're giving your attention to all of these things, every message, every person you talk to, every conversation that you engage in, besides all of the stuff that you consume, the consumable stuff, man, that stuff is crazy, right? Okay, we need to do this. We need to pause before we react, and we need to feel what is the vibration of this thing I'm consuming. Okay, we need to pause before we react. We can do this with anything. If something hard comes at us in our life, or someone in our family is mad at us, or we have a whatever happens, pause for a second and feel what the frequency is. And every single time you will be able to tune into it and feel it, and it will guide you. Okay, and then when you do that, you can return to your center, right? And then we need to connect with God and with our higher self. So before we react to all of these things that are here to distract us and distort reality, we need to do these things, okay? We need to stand in our sovereignty and become untouchable. No matter what comes at us, no matter what flows in, we have the ability to become untouchable. Nothing gets to ruffle our feathers, right? Frequency is a choice. Fear vibrates low and dense, and love vibrates high and expansive. So you will know if something feels dense and low, and you'll know immediately. And I'm telling you, that discernment radar, when you start to tune into these frequencies, will never ever lead you wrong, and it will become so sensitive. It will become so highly tuned in to you getting still and asking, or just tune in. You don't even have to say anything, right? So here's the thing. What I feel must happen is that humanity has to awaken, not just intellectually, but vibrationally. We have to awaken to the vibrations, because this is how we've been being controlled, right? We need to remember who we are. We need to remember that we are beings of light. We are creators of reality, and we are children of the infinite God, okay? Every single soul that awakens matters. Every single soul who has an awakening matters. Everyone matters, okay? And what you put out to the world, so you're an awakened soul, whatever light, even if you're not awakened, if you have a light, we all have light, but every single light matters. Your light matters, okay? Here's what I think needs to happen. Here's what I wrote next. No more passive spirituality. We can be all passive with our spirituality, but now is the time for active spirituality. The moment is here for us to actually embody spirituality. It's time for us to vibrate in those frequencies, in love and bliss and joy and contentment. It's time. Don't get lost in the noise. Rise above it. Trust your soul and trust God. Okay? That is extremely important. Okay, so here I'm going to go through a couple questions, and then I'm going to finish this out. So here's some questions for you to either just listen to and let some answers drop in, make you think, or you can even sit and journal on these if you like. So what if the chaos you perceive is actually the birth pains of a higher order emerging? How would that change the way you move through it? Okay, if you thought, oh, these are just birthing pains to something beautiful. And it always feels like You know, if only we'd stop doing this, going to war, if only we would stop doing that. I mean, we individually have the power to change the frequency of the collective. So we need to remember that. If history is a cycle of awakenings, what role do you believe your soul agreed to play in this turning of the wheel? Because what I'm going to go into next is, I've been hearing a lot of people talk about, and I've actually been doing my own research on this 12,000 year cycle that humanity goes through, where we go through all this darkness and chaos and all the horrible stuff, and then we get to a point at the top of the cycle where we have an opportunity to make some changes, and make some changes that could be, if anything, and this is where I believe we have the ability to go, is permanently into that higher timeline, the higher frequency, right? And we have the ability to break out of this. It feels like this is a cycle that has been happening for thousands and thousands of years for humanity. So could the turbulence you feel be an invitation to remember something that's ancient within you? I really love that. What messages are you unconsciously allowing into your field that weaken your clarity? So be careful what you consume. You know, be very, very careful. And I know I say this a lot, but it's more important now than ever that you disconnect from the noise and you tune into your inner knowing, right? Do you know the difference in your body between the resonance of truth and the weight of deception? Do you know that? Do you know what that feels like in your body? It's a great question, right? How often do you stop to question why something is demanding your attention? If something's demanding your attention, or someone, some situation, something, whatever it is, do you ever stop just to question why that's demanding your attention? Okay. Are you choosing your reality, or are you letting outside frequencies program it for you? You know, I will tell you, and I bring this up every once in a while, but the focused life force energy, the higher consciousness field that I talk about, and I have a link under this video where you can get a free trial to try it out, is a very, very important tool. And I believe this is part of the technology that's coming forward for human beings to be able to jump off this cycle, this wheel of this, control system. It's just, I think that these are these beautiful technologies that are coming in. Okay. What vibration are you habitually broadcasting into the collective field? Do you broadcast fear, doubt, love, or courage? Can you feel how your inner state directly shapes the timeline you are experiencing? We talk about timelines all the time, and timelines can be walked in the same time. Two different timelines can be walked on at the same exact moment. So it just depends on your inner state directly shapes what you're experiencing. Can you feel it? Can you feel that? What would your life look like if you deliberately chose to vibrate only in alignment with love and frequency? And I'm not talking about taking care of situations or relationships or whatever that need to be taken care of instead of just being walked over because you're always in love. And that's partly where sovereignty comes in. Sovereignty is a powerful word. That, along with freedom, are some of my favorite words. Freedom and sovereignty. We all want to be sovereign instead of controlled. What would your life look like? Oh, I already said this one. Are you more addicted to the frequency of drama or the frequency of peace? There are people who cannot break out of suffering, sadness, guilt, shame, victimhood, because that's where they're comfortable. And as human beings, we like to be comfortable, and it's a lot of times it's to our own detriment, because that's like we get these ruts of comfort, and to break out of them, it's like going to the gym when you maybe haven't been to the gym in 10 years or 1 year. It's going to be uncomfortable when it's a lot more comfortable to sit on the couch and eat a bag of chips and just binge out on Netflix, right? So where is your comfort zone? And you might think, well, I don't really want to be out of shape and overweight, but you're comfortable. Okay, so you might be comfortable with chaos, even a little bit of chaos. The reason I think I'm expanding on this is that it's time to clear out all of the clutter, all of the baggage, clear it all out. Okay? So are you more addicted to the frequency of drama or the frequency of peace? If your energy is a vote for the future, what reality are you voting for every day? What do you vote for with your frequency, with your energy? You get a vote. Every single day you get up out of bed, you get to vote on what frequency and how you can lift the planet and lift your neighborhood and lift your home. All of that. What illusions are you still clinging to, even though they're crumbling before your eyes? That's a really important one. And I see many, many people, because maybe their job depends on it. Maybe their ego depends on it, or whatever it might be. And these are tough questions. These are really tough questions for some people. If there truly is an unveiling in what's happening right now, what truth about yourself are you most afraid to face? This is something that we must each individually ask ourselves and be willing to take some hard steps and course correct to where we know we need to be. Okay, that one's super important too. How much longer will you wait before fully stepping into the power you already feel stirring within you? This is a choice point from my perspective. What if humanity's survival depends on you personally waking up right now? And, I say that because I think there are layers of awakening, and I do believe we're caught in such a noisy, distracted world. And I say this because I know I get caught in it myself. But if I knew exactly the impact that I could have on humanity, and it depended on me, what would I do different? Like, that's a super good question to ask yourself, right? Can you imagine what the world would become if even 10% of people remembered their divine identity? Okay? We all know that it doesn't take the mass majority. It actually only takes a very small percentage. And can you imagine if 10%? I actually think we're past that. I think we're past 10%. I think we're much more than that. Because it's just something I feel. I feel like it's just happening. The people I talk to, and there are some things that I see that it's just like, okay, there are so many more people who are aware of what's happening. Okay, and then a couple more. What daily practices are you willing to commit to in order to hold your frequency above the noise? You've got to put some habits in place, right? Where in your life are you still feeding the system of fear instead of embodying freedom? You got to ask yourself where it is. And you might think, oh, I'll just do this thing. And I deserve, I had a long day. I deserve to just lay on this couch and scroll through Instagram for an hour. What part of you are you willing to change, right? What beauty, truth, or love are you uniquely here to anchor during this storm? We're all here with different gifts and different creative forces that we can bring out. So what beauty, truth, or love are you uniquely here to anchor during this storm? We're all different. We all get to do and be different things. So find that thing. You might not think it's a big thing. You might just be here to anchor love and just be love. That's it. It reminds me a little bit of Dolores Cannon wrote a beautiful book called The 3 Waves of Volunteers. Some of you might have read it. She did past life regressions for 50 years. And she started seeing themes that were coming out from people in the lives that they chose to come in and live in their past lives. Really, really interesting work that she's done. And she wrote this book. She wrote like 20 books, I think. But there's the one book where she wrote The 3 Waves of Volunteers. The first wave is a bunch of baby boomers came in because the frequency and the suffering was so low in the planet after World War II. A bunch of baby boomers came in. I'm a baby boomer. I don't know if I'm a third waver, but I might be. But then the second wave, the next generation that came in, these are people who literally came in to anchor love. They don't need to do anything. They just need to go to a coffee shop and sit and enjoy the surroundings and just vibrate in the frequency of love. And if you haven't read this book or checked out Dolores Cannon, you should. Her stuff is amazing. And this just made me think of that. So what beauty, truth, or love are you uniquely here to anchor during this storm? And then this final question. Are you ready to accept that you are the lighthouse, not just someone waiting to be guided by one? You are a lighthouse. We're all, each individually, exactly how we're supposed to be, lighthouses. And every single person who's awakened needs to turn on the light in their lighthouse, right? Okay. All right, so let me continue with some of my other stuff. So what I really focused on after that was this cycle of 12,000 years. And I've always been fascinated by that. And I've seen a lot of people that are maybe are spiritual teachers, esoteric. They teach about the esoteric, and they talk about this 12,000 year cycle, and even astrologers talk about this. So many traditions speak of humanity moving through vast epochs of ascent and descent, light and dark. Okay, so many old traditions, they speak of this. Humanity moving through these vast epochs of ascent and descent, light and dark. Some suggest that it's about 12,000 years, each rotation around this, which is, think about this, if we are here at this time in humanity, and we're participating, we're not only witnessing it, we are participating in it. Our soul chose to come during these times. Like, how amazing is that, right? Okay, so I've been learning, here's what I wrote. I've been learning from some modern esoteric teachers that see us within the apex of a cycle. And it's like a breaking point, like we're reaching a breaking point. The moment when the old cannot sustain itself and must transmute. And I love that word, transmute. The old, it can't sustain itself anymore. Too many people see it. There's a massive unveiling. And if you are tuned into the frequencies even a little bit, I'm telling you, if you feel from stuff you see that's happening in the world that something's off, that is telling you something is off. Something big is off. So here's how I see humanity navigating this. It's not a straight line. It feels to me more like it's a spiral, right? So I have 5 things. First one is, what this is doing is it's a confrontation with the shadow. And it's not just an individual shadow, it's a collective shadow, okay? It's a collapse of the outer systems. It's a rise of inner authority and spiritual sovereignty. Inner authority, right? I really love that. There's a collective resonance and upgrading. So the collective is upgrading. So even though there's a lot of people who maybe might not survive, as long as they might have, because of all the crazy things that are happening, and you can land that wherever lands with you. There's a collective thing happening, and then there's a synthesis, which is a new golden age, right? So if enough souls wake and act from love, wisdom, and courage, this returns light and can birth this new golden age. But what I wrote here is not in a naive sense, okay? So we're past being naive. Many of us are past being naive. So the greatest test is this. Do we collapse into fear, or do we hold the love frequency anyway? The dial is turned up, guys. It's on high volume. And not only that, they're using really big speakers. We need to look at it that way. This is all on purpose, right? And the volume is turned up. So the greatest test is, do we collapse into fear? And many people are doing that. Do you get to pay attention? Do you get to give your energy to people that are collapsing in fear? I say a big no to that, right? Or do we get to hold the frequency of love anyway? Okay, as this stuff blares out at us, we have a choice. We have a choice point. This is and will be, this is what I think is going to happen here. Mass despair, polarization, false prophecies and ego traps even, physical and environmental crises, right? And time compression and the speed of change. Okay, you really have to think about this. How many people have you talked to that have said, I can't believe how many things have happened since 2020, or even since the beginning of 2025? You look at what's happening, there is a time compression and there's speed of change. Things are happening so fast. It doesn't even give us a chance to collect our breath, right? The pace feels overwhelming, but remember this, okay? Remember this, your spirit adapts. So It might feel overwhelming, but if you sit and you be quiet and you center yourself and you ground yourself, you go within, even if you're quiet for 5 minutes, even 1 minute. If you got 60 seconds, go into your bathroom and just sit in stillness, right? The spirit adapts. We are adaptable. In fact, our spirits are a lot more adaptable than our human being self. We're caught in this dense 3D world, and your spirit's adaptable, okay? Keep doing inner work and keep holding the vision. All right, I love that. So then I had a really interesting thought, because many people have said this decade is a humanity-changing decade, and we're already 3 months left to the end of 2025, so we're past the halfway point. So what I thought is, I'm gonna really see what would it look like if this 12,000 year cycle, and this is just a possibility, a probability, but what if this 12,000 year cycle that's ending depends on us getting to 2030? So a little bit more than 4 years, okay? And actually, if you look at the very beginning of 2030, we've got 3 years, because we've got 26, 27, 28, we got 29, we got 4 years. Okay, so here's what I wrote. This is not a prediction, this is a potential, okay? This is me thinking possibilities, probabilities, it's a potential, okay? So for the rest of 2025, right into 2026, what's gonna happen is a peak unveiling. We're winding up to that so fast right now, okay? There's an intensification of chaos. There's no doubt, right? Mass disillusionment, which is actually good. Spiritual emergency, and the first lighthouses emerge. Okay, so I think that there are many people. I think that the first lighthouses have already started emerging. When I'm talking about you as a person, each person individually. And I think that because it feels like it's been so few previous decades, that this is the time where they're going to start popping up everywhere. Okay? The storm is undeniable. Fear rises, but here's the best part. So does your curiosity. When you get a little bit of fear, and this is what's going to happen for a lot of people, and not everybody listening to this is going to feel like they're going to dive into fear. I even think some of the things that have been kind of hard and horrible that have happened, that I've been paying attention to in the world, I never felt fear. I felt sadness, I felt injustice, and then, of course, then my discernment kicks in. It's so fascinating, okay? So then 26 to 27, what I think is going to happen is what I like to call a great sorting. So here's what I think. There's a breakdown of all the old structures, number one. And then what I love is this thought came in, information whiplash. So we're going to feel like we're getting, and in fact, you might already feel that way, that the information that comes at us, the things that are happening and changing so fast, it feels like a little bit like whiplash, right? And this is basically confusion. What they're throwing at us to keep us confused is basically they're weaponizing it. Okay, they're weaponizing information, and what it's trying to do, and this is what you need to remember, is it's trying to keep us off center, right? So confusion is weaponized to keep us off center, and then what starts to happen, and I believe it's going to start happening next year, is because it's actually more and more, but it's already happening. There's going to be a rise of parallel systems. It's already happening on a local level with people opting out and homeschooling, people going to their local farmer, people growing their own gardens, people opting out, and the rise of parallel systems. I believe that that's already a really huge thing that's happening now, but it's going to intensify. And I believe that next year, we're going to be seeing more and more and more of that, right? And then there's going to be an accelerated awakening. A sorting of energies. People will self-select into different frequency zones. People will just self-select. If people want to stay, say with the modern medical system and all the pharmaceuticals, if people will self-select into where they want to be. So this is a sorting, okay? Some will double down on fear and control, and others will pivot into love and sovereignty, okay? Some will double down on, I've had one of my sisters who, after last year's election, cut almost all of us out because she made assumptions about, this was last November, and I haven't talked to her since. It makes me sad. But it's almost like this is a doubling down for some people. That's what they see, right? So we have to. It's not that we can't miss them or send them love, but we cannot mourn them, or I don't know. You can mourn that. I sometimes miss my sister, but I don't miss the frequency. I don't miss the fear and the hate energy, which was coming out of her. Okay. So then I think then we go to here, 2027 to 2028. This year feels like a turning point year. Okay. There's revelation and collapse. These two things, they converge. So there's revelation, and then something collapses. Okay, and they might be mini collapses to begin with. Big truths come out, and they're impossible to dismiss. Okay, and then what happens is the shock waves. They ripple through humanity. Okay, and here's something I think a lot of people have been talking about, but I believe at some point before this decade is out, there's going to be what I like to call a global pause. There might be the grid goes down, the electrical grid. There might be the internet shuts off. There's going to be a global pause. I really believe that. I don't think it's going to be out for a long, long time. This is where you be prepared, not just physically, but you're prepared mentally and emotionally, and you're just prepared. So what I think will happen is that normal life will halt temporarily, okay? And the chaos, it'll be very chaotic, but what will happen is it'll help us become very clear. I remember, I think it was in April, but the electrical grid went down, I think it was in Spain, and it almost did an emotional, spiritual reset on the people there. And I can't remember, I don't know if it was Spain. Comes to the front of my mind. And if you think about what happened, many people couldn't tap into their phones. Many people, there was no electricity. People were stuck in subways, and people were stuck in shopping, whatever. And it was almost like it jolted these people awake, because if you go into any city or in any small town even, people are staring at their phones, and they're not present. They're completely distracted. Okay, so I really think that we are going to reach a point where there's going to be a pause in the global. It's going to be global. And here's what I say to that: if you are, if you find yourself in that moment, celebrate it, because I think it's an important step. That's my perspective. Okay. Here's another cool thing. So we think we are careful. Many people are careful about the thought of AI integrating into every part of human life. But I do believe that there's an important part that technology plays. Okay. So here's what I think is going to happen. Technology and spirit fuse. And I'm not talking about transhumanism. I'm not talking about that at all. And what will happen is this technology will amplify consciousness. And honestly, guys, this is what the FLFE, this platform does. This is what this technology does. This is quantum entanglement. This is technology that is designed specifically to raise the consciousness on a grid system. This is really, if you have not tried this, please go try the 15-day free trial. You don't have to do anything but put your address in. That's it. It's really, really easy. And this is where I think technology and consciousness are going to complement each other. Because we all know that there's so many good things that technology is going to be able to do for humans, right? Okay, so what's hidden cannot stay hidden anymore. I think that's what's going to happen in 2027 to 2028, is the things that are hidden, they simply are not going to be able to hide anymore, okay? And then 28 to 29, I believe that this is where not only do we plant all the new seeds for new earth, but we get to start watching the seeds that we planted before start to sprout and grow. So 2028 to 2029, as we get ready to go all the way to 2030. So I think that there's going to be a cultural and a creative renaissance. I believe that so many people are going to start to understand the beauty of being a human being and the creative gifts that we can bring. Okay? Art, music, storytelling. And I think what happens is we change from a dystopian mindset where everything is hard and we all have to suffer to becoming more visionary, right? We start to imagine ourselves beyond survival. Think about that. Everything we do, that, even going to work, we're going to work because we have to survive. We have to pay our mortgage. We have to pay our electricity bill. We have to buy food to eat. So can you imagine if we weren't always in survival mode and we could bring our gifts to the world? We would all be doing what we love. I know that sounds like a pipe dream, like a utopia that, but I believe this is an absolute probability for a timeline. So we start to imagine ourselves beyond survival. We start to go more local for food and energy and even our health systems, right? And we rely less on things that are centralized control. We start to rely, maybe you do something in your neighborhood that can get you guys off a grid for the electricity, So we start to remove ourselves from these centralized control systems. Maybe we start bartering a little bit more or whatever. And I do believe that in this time period that there's going to be a collective healing, humanity needs to heal, right? I think that what's going to happen is there's going to be new leadership models, service, integrity, wisdom. There's going to be elders and visionaries. I think a lot of these gifts that humans have because we are divine sparks of God, these are going to start to come out more. And people are it's not going to be like woo-woo or, and this is how we can guide through this life on this planet, right? A new civilization appears slowly, okay? It's still turbulent, okay? I don't think it's going to be, there's too many of us, too many energies, too many frequencies, too many systems, too many egos. And I think this is going to happen slow. And I think it's going to still be rocky and chaotic and turbulent, right? But hope and creativity will really start to show its face on a really big level. Okay, and then this, let me see. Oh my goodness. I cannot believe how much I wrote in this journal. Okay, so 2029 to 2030, okay? Stabilization of the higher frequencies. I think we're going to go into a place where these higher frequencies are going to literally stabilize and they're going to anchor in. They're going to anchor in. So envision, realize that you have a piece of that. You have a part in this play to play. You have the ability to be an anchor point. And if you look at yourself, your frequency that way, the game changes. The game changes. It does, it's amazing. Okay, we anchor in the new paradigms. We decline mass fear. When the media or whatever, the government, whatever, tries to push fear at us, we just decline. Just say, I'm not playing that. I don't do that, right? There's a wider spiritual perception. There's more experience, there's more synchronicity, and there's more intuitive guidance. More people are tuning into their inner guidance. We have all the answers. We have all the answers for what we need. It's really pretty beautiful. And even, here's something I actually really love that this came in. And even multidimensional reality will be natural. We'll realize, we are multidimensional beings. We are infinite. We can't even fathom that. A new frequency stabilizes. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. And it will actually happen, bring in a new cycle of light. Okay? So here, then I'm gonna finish this off. Oh, I'm almost done. Okay. The next 5 years may feel like a compression. Okay, and it already does feel that way. I think that 2020 kicked off something that had been started a long time ago, but that's when it got real serious, right? So the next 5 years will feel like a compression. There'll be more change in 5 years than the previous 50 years combined. It might even be 100 years. I feel like the previous 5 years have been almost 6. Crazy, right? We have to expect waves. Chaos, revelation, and then creativity and stabilization. Okay, so there's going to be waves. It's going to be Chaos, revelation. Creativity, stabilization. We need to not underestimate the power of creativity on whatever that looks like, okay? Each wave will force us to face a deeper choice between fear and freedom. Yeah, every single wave that comes in at us, guys, it's going to force us into a choice. Here's the good news, okay? This tipping point of just pure consciousness can shift the collective field dramatically. If enough of us can feel this and awaken to this and ground ourselves, turn inward, come back to center, okay? This is a tipping point that will shift the collective field. There's a small percentage who has the power to shift the entire field. That's how it works, okay? The ancient cycles always show that after the deepest night, then the morning comes quickly. It dawns, like after the deepest, darkest night. And, to say I'm looking forward to that is an understatement, but I also feel like we can't just hunker in and wait for that to come. This is where our warrior selves have to come out. In whatever, you might just walk down the street in your neighborhood vibrating in the frequency of love. You don't necessarily have to go anywhere. Maybe you are homebound. Go sit in your yard or whatever your situation is. We all have that choice point. And then at the very end of this, and this is how I'm going to end, because I got through all of this and I thought, oh my goodness, I love this message. I love this thought process. And then I kind of sat with it for a minute. I still had my journal open. And then I wrote this: pure gratitude is flowing in. I just felt and still feel so much gratitude for the awareness that I have, the gift of some of the people who have come into my life these last few years. If the world had stayed the same, if they hadn't done all the crazy BS on humanity in 2020, there are some people that I would have never met, and they have changed my life dramatically in such a beautiful way. So pure gratitude flowing in for my awareness, my health, my discernment, and my capacity to love, to zoom out and see the bigger picture and release fear. I think that's all I wrote. That's the last. So maybe some of this will land with you. Maybe some of this you'll say, Jane, that's a wacky timeline thought process. And you know what? It's just me in my brain thinking about potentials and what I see happening, and just the discernment that I feel like I've been able to hone into a very fine tune. So I would love to know what you think about this. Did any of it land with you? And maybe there's a different timeline that you, or a time frame instead of the end of the decade. What do you think about all this? It's a kind of a really interesting thought process, but I hope this takes you into the first beautiful week of October of 2025 with some clarity, some love, and high frequency in your heart, and just moving forward. So thanks for watching today, guys, and we will see you next time.